Good morning, everyone. My name is Bhushan Chitre, and for my master's project, I work under Dr. Jane Hayes on automated requirements traceability, the study of human experts. Now, let's get started with the talk. So, this is an outline on how I'll be presenting my talk today. First, I'll start with the introduction, then I'll get into background and motivation, then I'll discuss the retro.net tool that I've worked on and made some improvements. And since our study involved human subjects, we had to have approval from IRB, which is the Institutional Review Board on campus. So I'll talk about that process, and then I'll get into the validation, which would include data sets we use, the experimental process, the data collection, analysis, and then results. Then I'll talk about some related work, and then finally I'll finish the talk with the conclusions, our future plans with this project, and the small demo of our experiment. So as we already know that every software development process involves uh, collecting the requirements for the project, which we are calling it high level document. So once we have all collected all the requirements, we go into things like experimental design, the test cases, the implementation, which would be your source code. So we are calling this group as low level document. So in safety critical software systems such as medical softwares or NASA space program or nuclear power plant, it is extremely important for these softwares to find out whether high level requirements are implemented in the low level requirements. So how do we find this? So we use the tracing. So we have automated methods that generate these candidate traceability matrices using information retrieval methods. So when I'm saying candidate traceability matrix, this is just a collection of possible links between two artifacts. So as you can see in this diagram, that some of the requirements at the high level has some link between the requirements at the low level document. So we may think, oh, wow, we have this figured out now, so we don't have any problem, but that's not the case. So all these automated methods and tools, they are based on information retrieval techniques. So these techniques are usually based on algorithms like vector space model, the vanilla space model, or such deep learning methods, and they are not 100% accurate. Often they generate unrelated items, or we call them false links. So it's not good in such safety software to have all these false links. So what's the solution? So solution would be is um, have human analyst verify and validate this generated candidate traceability matrix so that we can manually verify them whether there is a link or not. There is not a link between these two artifacts. So our project kinda based on the similar concept where uh, at the University of Kentucky there is such a tool called retro.net where it is using the vector space model, and I added functionality in that to, I'm calling it experimental version 4, and I also modified the existing tool to fit our experiment stealth study called, I'm calling it control version, or version 3, and then we recruited a bunch of human analysts and we give them the task to do the validation and verification on small data set, and then compare the results from version 3 to version 4. So a little bit of background is that when I'm saying requirements tracing, it's basically is the ability to describe and follow the life of requirement in both the forward and the backward direction. So basically you can trace between requirements high to low or low to high, or you can go from requirements to test cases, or you can go from code to requirements. And other um, paper by Dr. David Cuddleback, Alex Decter, and Dr. Jane Hayes, where they also ran the experiment on older version of retro.net, where they gave each participant different uh, level of precision recall, and then they have them do the verification to come up to the final TM and see if they improve the results or they decrease the recall and precision. So other motivation for the project was that in paper 2 and 3, which is advancing candidate link generation for requirement tracing study methods, in that uh, and the paper by V. Kong and Jane Hayes, proximity based traceability, empirical validation using rank retrieval, where they claim that during the validation and verification process by human analysts, is their first intuition of link, whether it's a link or not, it's more accurate. And if the users go back and change their link decision, uh, then it can cause them to have some mistakes in validation process. And also the other one is that if the analysts are spending way more time on some certain requirements than on average of others, then they would most likely would make mistake in the process. So we took this motivation in mind, and um, I implemented this two major functionality in our version of Retro. So these are the improvements I made on the Retro.net version 4, where I added the login form, where that you um, as you guys, some of you might remember from my demo in software engineering lab, where I showed you the old version of Retro, where you have to give the path of the high level, then path of the low level document, then you have to give the path of the stopper remover file, and then you have to set all the experiment that way. So in order to remove that manual process, I gave the users the user login form, where they just log in with their username, assign username and password, and then dataset and the experiment is already ready for them to perform. Other functionality was that you could export these candidate traceability matrix, which is in XML format, and it will save that progress, or at any time in the experiment they can export those results to CSV format. And then the other functionality that I already mentioned in motivation is that calculation of and monitoring the prime time function. So in this function, it works like if the user has gone through the waiting process of first 2 or 3 requirements, high level requirements, and finished all of the lower level requirements link decision, then it calculates each time that it took them to perform that each requirement, suppose R1, R2, R3, and then it calculates the average of those 3. And then if the user is on R4 requirement during the process, and if the time passes the 10% more than all previous three requirement average, then user will get a message saying, according to our studies, that if you spend more time on certain requirement, you're most likely going to make bad decision. Then the other thing was Project Tracker, where we are asked users to keep track of their time during the study, how long it took them to perform the entire study. So I added the functionality where they can just start and stop the timer as they perform the experiment, and it keeps track of their time in increment of 1 second. And then other requirement is the revisiting link decision prompt. So in this one, if the user suppose made decision on some link, and then after you went through some lower level requirements and come back to that link and want to change that decision, then we would prompt the user saying, hold on there, our study shows that your first intuition is always correct, and if you are going to change your previous decision, you're most likely going to make mistake. And then the other improvements, such as I created, since it was going to be distributed to all of the study participants, I created the retro setup for both of the control and experimental, where they can currently it only works on the Windows machines, and where it's complete package with the dataset and all the files. All the user has to do is install and on their Windows machine, and it's based on the .NET framework version 4. So if the user does not have that installed on their machine, it installs them for them and creates the folder in their programs files where uh, it will store all their experimental data. And then other functionality, just some performance improvements, since I already told you that this older version of Retro was already developed in late 2010, where all the libraries and all the other functionalities were kind of outdated. So I definitely improved them by bringing the compatibility with Visual Studio 2015 and by updating the libraries in certain programs to make them compatible. And also it will help the future developers to be able to have all that requirements already out of the way, and they can just build up on top of the retro version. So this is just gives you the the process of the user login form, where it's basically I designed I'll show you the demo at the end of the presentation about the tool, but it's just basically 250 lines of code, and it's similar to also the control version, where I have the two different UIs for the retro tool, and then the actual login functionality. I keep store all the username and passwords data in the on my multi-lab server, where I'm just making connection between the retro.net tool and my PHP file on the multi-lab account, and then it basically checks for the username and password. And then similar to the RTM in CSV format, it's I had to add functionalities in several different places, but mainly it's in the requirements panel of the code, which is 55 lines of code, and then 36 lines of code in the retro project form, where where it works with the menus, and then high level, low level panel, where all of their data is collected and tied up with the XML form. And then calculation monitor prompt function, which was a bit tricky to implement because I had to disable the multiple selection of requirements, because the way it works that when you first click on the first requirement and high level requirement, and then it goes into the low level requirement, and when the user finishes all the link decisions, so basically value not equal to default, then it would store that time to complete that one requirement. So basically I have to calculate that, keep track of all the mouse clicks, um, and then it was done in the high level and low level panel, roughly 220 lines of code, and then the prompt message where it does compare the initial time with their current time, and then the 10% threshold value. If they pass that, then it prompts the user message saying, you're taking longer than your other requirements. And then project timer, it's just basically I have to create like at the top, just the designer where it has start stop button, and then it also if the user decides to finish the project in one setting, then it will record their final time and add that into the final RTM form. Then user prompt message for changing previous link decision status. So this requirement was similar to the other one where I had to keep track of the mouse clicks and compare the value if it was already not changed from default to some link or not link, and when user come back to change that value, then we would prompt them saying, hold on, you cannot, we don't recommend you changing the previous link decision. And then the other one is the retro.net setup Windows .msi installer package for both of the tools, where I use the Microsoft Visual Studio has this extension called Microsoft Installer Project, and then I could incorporate that with the tool and created the final setup package. So I had one difficulty with that is I created all of that once, and then I tested out because most of the students are going to be using this on campus machines, and on campus machine you don't have administrator rights on that machine. So when I went to do that, it prompted me with admin password. So I had to remove that, come back and change the permissions, and then I had trouble with pulling the data set in the package. So I had to fix all that, and then logo wasn't showing up in the package and things like that require files. So that was a little bit tricky at the end. The other performance improvements is already mentioned, that just similar to both of the tools. I've changed a little bit color schema about the tool, where it's going to where or how they have to email it to me, and just a little bit updating. So this is the kind of back end of the retro.net, how it's implemented. So it's already mentioned it's implemented using C# on .NET Framework in Visual Studio 2015. So this has these packages. It's kind of like pluggable architecture where user can, instead of changing the entire process, all of these components are kind of separate, and then you can just kind of make them work in one big project. So the main project is the retro.net solution, and then the retro would be the user interface. The toolkit would define the algorithms and structure of the data, and then like your vector space, vocabulary filter, system test, and all of these things has kind of like their unique um, functionality in the entire project. this is basically how the retrorot network. So like I mentioned, it has two main datasets, which is the initial document, which is high level document and low level document, and then it gets that document and then it generates the. I'll talk about each of these functions in the next slides, but this is just the flow, how the flow works in the tool. So it goes from high level document to generate the raw term list, stem the terms, top word removal, and count term frequency, and then calculate the term weights, normalize the documents, filter some of the terms, and then it collects that as a high level document collection, because this method is going to be kind of like a loop, because until you come to the last requirements in the data. So then it normalizes the document, then it can calculate the candidate links, then it kind of does the filtration on the link results, and then it has its own link collection, and then the feedback, and then it comes back to the collection, and then so on. So basically in the general term list, what happens is that basically if you have a sentence, say in the requirement, like click on the program icon on desktop to start the application properly. So in this one, it kind of generates the list based on the spaces, the commas, punctuations, and things like that. So it's kind of splits them up into click on the program and then makes them into list, and then stem results is just this step makes sure that each of the different versions of the words has the same match meaning accurately. So basically, if I'm saying click, clicked, clicking, it makes sure that all of those three meaning it's the same word. And then stop word removal, which we provide our tool, the English common words files like such as a, the, and, etc. So it removes them, because all of those words, just because they're showing up in both of the requirements often, doesn't mean there is a link, because it's just a common English word. So we remove them, filter them out at the stop or removal stage. Then it just counts the frequency of terms. So um, it just counts how many times the incidence of each term occurred, and then it calculates, gives them the weight. So it assigns the weighting using the TIDF value, and then it just normalizes them, the documents, and then filter out if unnecessary. It can filter out unnecessary terms by any custom filters. So if you know some of the reason you don't want some words to go in there, you can have the custom filters there. Then it uses mainly two algorithms, where it's vector space model and then the TIDF weighting process, where so vector space model is developed at Cornell University in 1960s to early 1970s. It represents the, so it basically you are sending query into collection of documents. So it basically keeps them uh, keeps each of those documents and query into the n-dimensional space vectors, and then it calculates the similarity between two vectors. So as you can see, DJ, which is the W1W, it's just the terms, each word's terms, and then the same thing with the Q. So, and then it calculates the similarity using the cosine of two vectors, which is the multiplication of two vectors, and then dividing it by the mean of those two vectors. Then TIDF, which is the term frequency inverse document frequency. So retro.NET implements the STRDF in wet calculator, which implements the calculator item weight calculator using the following function. So in this calculator weights function, it's keeping the vocabulary of all the terms, and then the collection of the documents that I already mentioned, where and the high level and the same thing at the low level, and then it counts the maximum frequency in each of these vectors, and then using the formula like frequency divided by maximum documents frequency times the log of total number of documents divided by log of number of documents terms occur in each document, and then it does the normalizing the term, and then the second stage is the inverse document frequency. So after all the implementation was done, we did, since this project was going to be distributed in so many different participants, we had to make sure that all the functionality on Retro was working on different machines. So I tried using Retro on 12 different machines on different parts of campus and labs where I went on University of campus. Then I also did several extensive use cases on Retro, such as the system installation, whether it worked on different machines or not, started the project properly or not, the login form kept the error checking or not, and then how was its appearance, did it save the current progress during the experiment or not, different from messages at different test cases, and then the XML was able to save or not, or see results at any time, the time recording function, the different prompt messages, and several other requirements. So before we could even recruit any of the human subjects, we must get IRB approval from on campus. So from Office of Research and Integrity. So we started this process in January, but we could not submit our proposal to certain date because they only meet like 3 times a week. You can only submit the document 3 times a week, and then after that the IRB committee is formed because some of the people are also outside the campus, and then they do your review on your proposal. So first we initially submitted our non-medical IRB protocol, and then after that the committee reviewed it, and we had to answer their several questions. We had to make 3 different revisions on the proposal, and then finally we received the IRB approval in middle of February, and then after that we could start recruiting people for our and then now we are at the validation where I'll just discuss our research questions, then our independent variables, then some of the hypotheses, and then I'll talk about experimental design, test validity, and then finish up this section with the results. So we have 2 main research in mind. Do the users who worked on our experimental version perform better than the users who worked on the control version? And then our other, we were curious about, does the amount of time spent on the process enhances your precision or recall with the final RTM. So for this study, our independent variables were like, first of all, we had 2 different versions of Retro.NET, which was control and experiment. Our dependent variables were precision, recall, F2 measure, lag, and the time log, which is the time they spent to perform the experiment. I'll explain you all these measures in details in upcoming slides. And then our control variables, where we had control over them, was the answer set, which was of the change style data set that we use for this experiment. So precision means that number of correct links returned divided by total number of return links. So, and then the recall means the number of correct links returned divided by total number of correct links instead of all the number of return links. So, and the other measure we measured was the F measure, which is the harmonic mean of recall and precision. And when we are saying F2, which just means F measure for A equal to 2. So the formula is that 1 plus A square, which in this case is 2, and then is 2 square, so 4 over recall plus 1 over precision. And then lag is the measure of separation between true links and false links, and it's calculated by this formula. So our null hypothesis was that since we were comparing the results from the both tools, so our null hypothesis was that there is no improvement in precision recall, F2 measure, or the lag. So our null hypothesis is that P of version 3, which is precision of version 3, is equal to P of version 4. So we did not see any change. And our alternative hypothesis was that there will be an improvement or decrement in the different outputs of the version 3 and version 4. So it is basically that PV3, which is precision version 3, did better than instead of our version 4 tool, and so on for all four requirements. So for this study, we were provided by researchers at Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo University, where our training data set, when first we did the demo to the participants, we used the data set called Moonlander, which was fairly small, so we can do a demo and people can get familiar with the tool, which had 10 functional requirements, so that was, and 5 system tests. And then our actual experimental data set that we used was called chain style, so it was based on the Java code formatter program that upper division software engineer student wrote for one of their classes for, and it had 32 requirements, so 18 of these were functional and 14 of them were non-functional, and it had 17 system tests. So we chose this because first of all, it would be easy to understand for students to go through with, since it was Java code formatter domain, and then its appropriate size, so it should not take analysts to go through the data too long because we were asking them to perform the study for us. So the human subject recruitment, so we recruited 20 upper division software engineering computer science students. So, and when the day we showed them the demo, then we filled out the informed consent where we just basically told them that we won't be collecting any personal information, or none of the results will be trackable to their name. And then we had them filled out a pre-study survey, which basically just included what kind of classes they had, what kind of industry background they had, or if they had any tracing experience in the past or what's their comfort level before going into the study. So that those are kind of data, metadata gave us the idea choosing the subjects for different versions and not to put like all the experienced people in the one group of the tool. So after that, they worked on the Moonlander on their own time, and we provided them with the instructions on how to do the experiment, how to install the package on their computer, and we did not request any results back from them for that dataset. So, like I already said, I analyzed the pre-study survey, and then based on their experiment and background, I tried to be random with putting people on control and experimental. That way, there are equal number of experienced people in both data sets. And then I assign them username, password, which they'll be using to perform the experiment. And then after the 1 week, they were given instruction to use and download the experiment. And they had roughly 2 weeks to finish the task and send us back the result. So this is how the actual experiment works. So we give them the initial requirements. So we have the chain style data set, and then the other one, then it uses the, in our case, it uses the control or experimental version of retro.net, and then it generates the candidate traceability matrix, and then the human analysis. So, in this, it will be students who would perform the weighting on candidate traceability matrix, and they would take their time and come to the final RTM, and then they will send that results.xml and the time log back to us. So data collection, we have rich set of metadata, includes the pre-study survey, and then also I had them do post-study survey that I'll talk in next slides, where I'll set up the survey monkey basically to have the study done online using their user ID, so we won't have any false results. And then we ask them to, in addition to keeping our record time function, we ask them to do the time logs and send us back. And then the results, and then the action log, which action log keeps track of all their mouse clicks, how many times they open the project, what requirements they went through first, what decisions they make. So it basically keeps track of all of that. So this action log file could extensively be analyzed later. So threats to validity. So our internal validity was basically the tool itself, that and then human error during the experiment, then the hypothesis guessing, the personal bias in constructing the answer set was the threats to internal validity. The construct validity was minimal for this project since the information retrieval measures are very common. They're used most commonly for any tracing studies. External validity was the experimental dataset, because since it was implemented by the Purdue software engineering students, but it cannot be generalized to suppose if it was implemented by industrial people. Conclusion validity was statistical analysis, and reliability validity, the study process defined and it's easily repeatable. We are already in repeating we are already repeating it with no, the study process defined and easily repeatable, and we are already in process with other universities to take this experiment and run at their university and at their students and see if we can compare the result between two and also get more data. So total results, we use 20 participants recruited, which people signed the informed consent, but according to our informed consent, they did not have any pressure on how to submit results, or they can drop out at any time during the experiment. So I guess they did, because we only received the 14 results back, and 5 of which was the control version people, and then 9 of them were the experimental version. Well, which we did not want to hear that, because now we have unfair comparison of two different tools. So we had to choose randomly 5 experimental version results, which are basically just ran the went online, just generated a random number and just picked the results for that user ID. So to ensure that it's total random, these are the acceptable levels of recall and precision. So for good acceptable recall has to be between 60 to 69%. Good one is 70 to 79%, and then for excellent it is 80% to 100%. For precision, it is calculated between 20% to 29%. For acceptable, for good, 30% to 49%, and for excellent, it is between big jump between 50 to 100%, and for lag, the number is lower the better. So 3 to 4 acceptable, 2 to 3 good, and 0 to 2 is excellent. So now let's get into the actual results. So I would like to mention here, acknowledge the Dr. V. Kong, who worked on the tool called Candle, that basically gets the input as answer set of the tool, answer set of the data set, and the results of the candidate traceability matrix, and then it calculates the precision under control. So I use that tool implemented by him, and then I calculated the precision and recall. So as you can see, our results were kind of not promising, because we had scattered. This is the scattered plot of the precision versus recall, and ideally we would want the precision to be between 50% 100%, which we got precision close to almost 35%, and for the excellent recall would be 80 to 100%, which we got overlap between the control and experimental version. We got almost 100% for two people with the recall. So in other words, in conclusion, we received better recall than precision. So this is the raw data that I used to plot the graph. So we have two measure comparison. So basically this is since one user wasn't doing the both control and experimental, so we have to keep them separate, their results separate. So this is just a bar graph to show the results of F2 measure of control version and experimental version. So we received the better results for the experimental tool. Overall, like you can see, we had for user 2, even 2, 3, 4 perform better with F2 measure. Lag comparison. So for acceptable lag value are between 3 and 4. So and good values between 2 and 3, like I already mentioned, and 0 to 2 is excellent. So our experimental tool performed better in regarding to the lag values, because we had 1, 2, user 1, 2, and 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, almost all of them are close to between 0 and 2. So this comes back to our research question where we were curious whether the actual time spent on the experiment increases the precision recall or not. So in this one, I did the scatter graph of experimental versus control version, and so like you can see in the raw table that this uses the actual stamps the user spent on the experiment versus the F2 measure that they produce. So in this one we had mixed results because users spend from anywhere to from 35 minutes to 120 minutes, and most of our users spend 120 minutes on average. So in this one I can say one thing, that the users who spend 120 minutes had better results in F2 measure. So lastly, we just wanted to compare the precision level itself with the both tools, and in this one the results were pretty close, but for 2 and 4 it performed better in the precision, and it lacked the precision in the rest. In recall, it was pretty much close tie, that almost all of those tools perform close to each other, but user 3, however, dropped the recall almost down to 10%. So this is just like I already said, we collected the post-study survey also online, and it just had general information about what strategies user use to compare the and make their link decisions, and what was their comfort level after the experiment, any comments or suggestions. So I've chose like these couple of questions that are important. So in the making this decision, so how confident were you decision in basically making the links between the high level and low level. So in here, 33 people were confident 90%, and almost 67 participants answered that they were 80% confident with their decisions. So, and then the other question was how confident were you that you had found all the links between the. So in here, as you can see, confidence level dropped. So 50% of the people said they were only confident 70%. The 15%, two of the 15% people said that 80% confident, 90% confident, and 20% people were 60% confident. So we definitely need to keep this in mind next time. And this is something to bring up. So for further anyone who's going to planning on replicating the experiment, so these things they can keep in mind to provide people in instructions, maybe better to perform the task. So what strategy did you use to complete the task? So there were most common answers that I selected. They were like I went through each high level document and marked the low level documents with link based on the description, the keyword searches, the weight options, and they switch between different tabs and the suggestion in Retronet. So, and also other one was if any comments about the tool or suggestion to the tool. So almost everyone found the tool easy to use and follow to run the experiment, and some of them said that prompt message actually helped them with the decision, but some of them said that they did not like being prompted when changing the link decision every time because they were changing so many previous link decisions. So this is the relative work. Already mentioned two of these papers which we used as our motivation, and first paper, it's basically we use that to replicate some level of the experiment, which is having the human analyst do the weighting process. And then the third one is advancing candidate link generation, which is basically gives us idea of like what level the other algorithms worked in information retrieval methods, and according to that paper, vector space model still beats overall performs better. So finally comes to the conclusion in future work. So this study definitely confirms that we definitely need to study the interactions of human analysts and the traceability matrix. We definitely want to keep improving and assisting users in making this waiting process easier, and just repeating my initial study research questions, where do the users who worked on experimental retro perform better in the validation process than one who worked on control? So the answer show yes and no, since we found our experiment will better in the recall to measure lag but not improve the precision, and neither did they improve precision in control. So I think this is the lack of finding the right analyst to do the task. Does the amount of time spent on the retro version enhances the precision of recall of final RTM? And so the participant who spent on average 120 minutes had better results, and basically all the participants took on average 80 minutes to 120 minutes. So our experimental performed very well regarding the lag in those. So future work, definitely we want to recruit more human analysts to get better conclusion and do the better analysis. So we are already in process or planning to take our study and perform the experiment in California, Polytechnical State University at California, and also at Youngstown State University, Ohio in near future. And then we also plan to use maybe different data sets for the experiment and see maybe people have better understanding of those data sets. And to me, with this project, I felt one limitation, or such as that right now it only works on the Windows machine, and not everyone uses Windows machine, or when you're asking the participant to perform in study, we don't want them to be inconvenienced and try to find the Windows machine on the lab. So we want to eliminate that in the future, and maybe implement the retro.net into the make it as a web application where we are not limited to the one particular OS, and anybody can just uh, do this validation on so many different data sets and try to improve their answer sets for those data sets. And one thing we found was that it is time consuming process if the data set becomes larger for analysts to go through and do the weighting process. So we need to improve the auto-generated candidate traceability matrix accuracy itself, and maybe possibly include different data mining techniques or deep learning techniques. And now I'm gonna just do the quick demo. I'll take 5 minutes for this, just showing the functionality, starting the experiment, what selection to do, and then the different prompts and how the experiment looks like. So that would take me maybe 5 minutes or 2 minutes, 3 minutes. and then I'll come back and say acknowledgement. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Hayes for her great help with all and guidance throughout the project. I probably asked her a million questions by now, and she was very patient throughout the process and helped me in most critical times for this project and being available all the time. And second, I would like to thank all my committee members who are here for taking their time from for my defense out of their busy schedules. And lastly, I would like to acknowledge all the participants in the study, the previous retro.net developers and the financial supporters like NASA and NSF grants who funded this development of the retro, and our researchers at Cal Poly for providing the data sets. And now I'll take any questions.